thankless job in the world as the executive director of the LHSAA. It's a big challenge, but he's up to it. He's worked vigorously on a plan to reunite the public and private schools in football, as I'm sure you're quite interested in. He previously served in the same capacity for the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association, and he has local ties. He married a New Orleans girl from Mount Carmel, so he's home. We're happy to have him, and happy to have him with us here today as well. Please give a warm Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation Quarterback Club welcome to Eddie Bonine of the LHSAA. Eddie.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know if I'm going to need this mic. I'm an old PE coach, so I have that PE voice. I feel comfortable up here. I'd rather be walking around down there. But first of all, I want to thank the Quarterback Club and all of those individuals that are here today. And I will tell you this, that of all the coaches in this state that are on this stage up here today with me, and some of those that coached last week, like Louis Cook and Del Weiner and some of those, if that's what all we had across our state in our coaching programs, we wouldn't have to worry about certain rules that we have in our rule book. They do it the right way, and I commend all of you for getting to where you are because you do it the right way. So I want a nice round of applause for that as well. Class acts, all of you. Again, thank you for the sponsors of the Quarterback Club. Obviously, there's a long history here, but there's one individual that I've had the privilege to work with for a short period of time, but also have heard from a distance. When I was in the state of Nevada, we had a gentleman very similar to Mr. Jim Ravnick that ran our state wrestling, who I guess trained or was a mentor with Jim, who worked for us out of Las Vegas. And I want to give kudos out to Jim, and he was going to join us today, but I got a note that he had to go to a doctor's in emergency fashion. So our prayers and thoughts are with Jim, but I wanted to give that knowledge to Jim Ravnick. A year ago last week, I interviewed for this position. This weekend, it'll be 1 year that the press conference was held in the Dome, and they introduced me as your new executive director. There's not one person in this room that probably didn't think to themselves, who the hell is this guy? And that's okay. Because when I've had the opportunity to get adjusted and to kind of learn more about the position, I will tell you this, that there were items that we discussed in my interview, which was approximately 2.5 hours, there in Baton Rouge, that wasn't discussed. And if you've been involved in an interview, you know you're going to talk about certain items, and you kind of get a feel, number one, of what the position is and what you're getting into by the interview questions. Maybe there's some concerns in certain areas, but I'm going to tell you right now, some things came up in the last year that I would like to have had a year to adjust and talk about, but has all seemed to come up in this first year. But I'm up for the challenges, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work as diligently as I can every day. In luncheon speaking like this, you know, you're supposed to start off with a joke. The only thing I can tell you is that, familiar with Seinfeld series, the Seinfeld series, everybody in here have a chance to see Seinfeld at one time or another. There was one where it was called The Red Dot. And George, you know, if you know the character George Costanza, he bounces from job to job, doesn't do a whole lot. But the bottom line is, he convinced Elaine to get him a job working with her and a gentleman by the name of Mr. Peterman. He got the job, the rest is history. He wanted to buy her a gift, or a thank you, if you will. So he bought her this sweater. Gave her the sweater, everybody oohed and awed over the sweater, but of course Jerry pointed out the fact that it had a flaw in it. It was a red dot on the sleeve. That became the focus. As your executive director of the LHSAA, it's my job to ensure that all in this room and others across our state focus on the sweater and not necessarily the red dot. The red dot can be many things. That red dot can be the split. That red dot can be the budget, the integrity of the association, the transparency or lack thereof of the organization, and many other talking pieces, the relationships between the LHSAA and the principals organization, the school superintendents, the legislature, the officials association, the coaches association, just to name a few. And it's about building those relationships. In the course of this year, I have done what I can to attain and maintain relationships with all the groups I just mentioned. And in some of those, no matter what we do as a group, as the LHSAA, or what I do as your executive director, it's not going to change some of the damage that has been done with some of those groups. I am full aware of that. But I'm not going to quit trying. And when it comes to certain topics, it's just, you can't change certain things. But one thing I do know that we're not going to change, and that is the pure traditions that are deep-rooted in the state of Louisiana when it comes to all of the sports offered at your respective schools and sanctioned by the LHSAA. And I'll risk it again, but I'll say it again. I found out very quickly in the state of Louisiana, football's the king. But I've also stated that we don't have 90,000 football players across our state as we do in total participants in multiple other sports we offer and sanction, and try to do the best we can with those multiple sports in the postseason and adhering to what we need to through the course of the regular season. Shortly after I got the job, I said I was going to do what I needed to do to try to find out why we are where we are, whether it be the split, or whether it not because of the split, or why we have legislators mad at us, and why do we have coaches that are upset with us, and why is the official association upset with us. So I did 6 cities in 4 days, starting in Shreveport, Monroe, Alexandria, Lafayette, worked my way to Baton Rouge, and down to New Orleans. And gathered a lot of good information, took a lot of notes, didn't make any promises, but had good conversations, because everybody felt the need to tell me what was wrong. But I had as many people tell me what was right, and how they wanted to get that back again. And that's what I'm going to build on. The sweater, not that red dot. What was I told? First, the rules. We have a book of rules. Somebody took a photograph that's haunted me in a positive way in the course of my tenure as your executive director. Well, I'm holding up that book. Have you seen it? Holding up the book. This is a book of rules, not a book of suggestions. That's what I said, and that's who ought to believe it. Principals made those rules, and my job is to enforce them equitably, swiftly, and appropriately. And where there's areas in those rules that give me some leeway to do some stuff, I'm going to err on the side of the child, if I can, and try to make a good decision. But I will tell you this, unless somebody walks up to the front of the LHSAA offices on 12720 Old Hammond Highway there in Baton Rouge with an M16 in their hand, there's no one decision I got to make that quick. I bring that knowledge from being an old school principal and taking care of kids and working in a building. I think through those conversations. I think through those decisions, but when I make one, I'm going to stand behind it. And I think that's what I was told needed to be done. Doesn't make everybody happy. But then I didn't take this job to make everybody happy. I took the job because I'm in this business for kids. And that's why I am an educator. That's why I came to the education side of education-based athletics and activities, to have the privilege to work with coaches, athletic directors, athletic administrators, principals, assistant superintendents, superintendents, and working with legislators, who many have already participated in the LHSAA long before I ever got here. But I found more people that love the organization and love what it does and what it stands for than I have found those who do not. So it'll be my plight to continue to work cooperatively with the groups I mentioned, continue to have fine venues, work with our corporate partners. And I'd be remiss today if I didn't say we couldn't do what we do right now in the Dome, or any of the other facilities we use for basketball, for swimming, baseball, cross country, any and all the things, volleyball. Most recently, our spear and cheer competition in Monroe. All of that stuff we couldn't do with the All State Sugar Bowl. They have stepped up with us, made a commitment to us, and it's our job to continue to do what we need to do to make sure we do it the right way. The LHSAA are the 396 member schools we have. It's not me. I have the privilege to be chosen to lead this organization. But we can't do it unless those principals, athletic directors, coaches, and all of those individuals that are responsible for the students in our organization every single day, every single hour, every single minute of the day, we're only as good as they are when it comes to enforcement of our rules and maintaining the integrity that we need. Now, I mentioned integrity a couple of times now. Integrity for the LHSAA is doing what we need to do at the offices in Baton Rouge to ensure that we're communicating clearly and working cooperatively and collaboratively with all of the schools we have in our state. But it's also their responsibility to ensure that what we're doing is also transferring onto the coaches and others. So we're all on the same page. But when somebody tells me, Eddie, the split's because we weren't adhering to the rules, only have a certain number of staff, only have a certain number of compliance officers. And we're not about catching you in the gotcha piece. We want to work for you and be a service organization to make sure we're all doing it the right way all the time. The right way all the time. And that's the way we build back the integrity of the LHSAA. And you know that I got your back. And I think that's a very important part of what we got. I say what I mean what I say. It's not always what people want to hear, but I wasn't hired to tell you what you want to hear. Because I think that's what got us in the situation we're in right now, prior to my arrival. So I want to work cooperatively with the media. I want to work cooperatively with the Officials Association, the Coaches Association, the superintendents. We brought them into the loop. Been working diligently with the legislature. We've already had presentations in front of the legislature. And I know I'm going to want to talk about the split, but let me just give you some quick numbers real quick, and you can write them down if you care to do so. Prior to the split, public schools won 30 state championships. We're talking about football. 30 state championships. Approximately 55% of them. Private schools, or parochial or private parochial, either one, they won 25 of those championships, approximately 45%. Real close when it's all said and done. But here's the number that's going to jump out to you why I feel that the plan we have now to solve the problem, it was not a public school, private school issue. It was a where your school is located issue. And what I was discussing was the fact that we want to take a look at how the students got to your respective schools in regards to the rosters. Because on the public school side now, there's so many educational options that permit students to move from schools to school to school, and for whatever reason, with authorization from the respective school districts or parishes, to get the educational option. At one time, it was either you went to your public school, but if you wanted another option, you went to a private school. Well, times have changed, and I think our rule book needs to change. We need to take at some of those rules and take a look at that. But of the numbers I just gave you, over that time frame from 2002 to 2012, before the implementation of the split, 67% of the championships that were won by schools who were housed in the metropolitan areas. The remaining 33% were in rural or non-metropolitan areas. So it wasn't a private school, public school issue, whether you were private or public. If you're a private school and you sit in downtown Baton Rouge and you have set by your board of trustees and directors a cap on your population, let's just say 500. And you have the opportunity to draw from approximately 275,000 people that have children, but you're a rural school with the same cap of 500, and you have less than 1,000, you have less than 5,000 people in your community, that's an equity problem. Eddie, challenge yourself. We want to find equity. Level the playing field. Level the playing field that Eddie doesn't mean y'all get a chance to go to the dome. Level the playing field to me, and the competitive balance is the fact you get beat maybe by 15 now instead of 50. And your team doesn't look like a mass unit. So when you come down and take a look at it, and I'm not going to get into the weeds of their explanation, but the bottom line is that when you got small schools and large communities, 67% of them are winning. And they're winning championships. They have more kids to choose from. And that's as simple as I can make that explanation at this point. So you don't have certain schools playing each other. Now the debate's going to come down to the items that we use, whether it be Department of Transportation, Federal Department of Transportation, the different forms of government agencies that we looked at to establish this. There's some schools that are on the bubble on whether they're metropolitan or rural. That's not going to be a stumbling block for Eddie. What do you want to play? You're on the bubble, you think you should be rural, you're rural. Okay? Let's move on. We're not going to get into the semantics of that right now, because I've said it before and I'll say it again publicly. I work on this whiteboard theory. We have a whiteboard this size right here. we're gonna write on it with what? A dry erase marker, correct? If you write with a permanent marker, guess what it does? It just screws that board up. Can't get it off. So let's do it in white. Let's do it in that dry erase. So if we have a problem, we change it. We work through it. It takes a couple of years to do that. Proposing to make it a 4-year plan eventually. So the executive committee of the LHSAA just recently last week approved for Eddie to take the private, public, pull them all back together, metropolitan, football only process, for me to speak to the principals, get them to endorse it for a 1-year pilot to show that it's going to work, and then we're going to put it in all those divisions of schools, leave your divisions where they are. We're not going to increase your transportation. You can play who you want to play. You can keep the divisions and rivalries in place, but at the end of the year, when you take the field, you know you're going to be playing against somebody that's about your size. Now, if I was to tell you that at the beginning, would you think, it's not a pretty good idea, good luck? Well, luck really doesn't have anything to do at this point. It has to do about education and letting people know. And I think at this particular point, what the board was telling me, Eddie, we think this will work. Sell it to the principals. I'm going to do that. But when it's all said and done, all of you will have a chance to see the success factor of it during that 1 year, which gives me and my coaches director and others the opportunity to tour the state and tell people what I'm telling you today in a thumbnail sketch, but give you a 70-minute or a 60-minute PowerPoint presentation with all the math numbers and how it'll work. I was charged to solve the split. I think I had the way to do that. But like any time when it comes to change, do people really want to change? Don't know. Change is difficult. Change is difficult anywhere you go. But especially when you come to Louisiana and you have a guy like me who wasn't born and raised here trying to ask you to change. I understand that completely. And I've got a lot of people that keep me on that train and keep me on that line to make sure that I understand that on a regular basis. And believe me, I respect that. I can handle constructive criticism. I'm thick-skinned. When it comes down to it, we need to focus. All of us need to focus on the sweater, not that red dot. Questions?
Hey, Mr. Bonine. First off, I'm a football official, and so I want to thank you for coming into a hornet's nest on your first active duty, I guess, last year, and getting that our fee schedule approved. So my question is, through those negotiations, what things did you learn from those negotiations can you bring forward to work with the principals and getting the association back together?
The Officials Association and the fee schedule was not one of those items that was on my interview. So you know that. Integrity, trust, and transparency. That's what failed prior negotiations with the officials. I think when it came down to it, and you obviously know about it, and there's others in the room that do as well, it wasn't about the dollars and the cents, but that's what it seemed to be framed around. It was about principles, spelled L-E, in negotiations and talking and going to the principals and going to others saying, we need to do this, and here's why we need to do this, and I'm not so sure that happened. But I will say this, I'm all about the bugs on the front windshield now, and I'm not looking in the rearview mirror. However, items in the rearview mirror, if you're not careful, will come up and bump you again. That's where I was with that. But I truly believe in the conversation and the negotiations we had, that if you like the fee schedule, then we're going to do it for 4 years. It's public knowledge, I have a 4-year contract. Negotiate with the new guy in 4 years if you want to change your schedule. But I don't plan on leaving in 4 if I can be renewed. I want to stick around. But I know that there's a timeline we need to deal with it. So it was about the integrity, about that trust. And every organization you mentioned, sir, I'm trying to do what I can to gain that trust back. You hired me to lead. Let me do that and let me show you that. But I have said this before and I'll say it again. As my daddy used to tell me, son, you can do what you got to do, but the proof's always going to be in the pudding. And that's where I am today, trying to prove that we're going the right direction. Next question. I'm not going to give any more time, I'm out. If you're going to wait that long. Seriously, any other questions? Thank you very much, coaches. Good luck to you. God bless you. God bless the Louisiana.